Alright guys, welcome to Cortland Center here in officially Burden, but we're right near Flint. Let's go inside and let's check this place out. Right, and as you guys heard, welcome to Flint, Michigan. Oh, we're officially Burden, but basically the Flint area. And welcome to the Cortland Center Mall. This mall was a real gem. You know, I really enjoyed being here, and for a little mall like this, we spent probably about an hour and a half in this mall, and I could have spent longer if we had more time, but you guys know from the videos you've seen from this trip, we went a lot of different places, so we ran out of time. But this mall is still stuck from many years, from many really decades ago, and you guys will see about the history in a second that this mall has been here for a long time. So, on to the history of this mall. In 1964, the Burton Township Board rezoned the property at the southeastern corner of the East Court Street and Center Road from a single-family residential commercial. And at that time, Forest City Enterprise, which you guys may know that they also opened up in the Boulevard Mall up by me, which as we speak is still open somehow, some way. But we're not about that. We're talking about the beautiful Cortland Center. But at the time, when the mall first opened, it officially opened as the Eastland Mall, which would finally open after there being years and years of issues. As I mentioned, it finally did reopen on October 1968. What was then Burton Township under the ownership of Forest City and Jack Schaffon, if I'm saying that right. Now, at the time, it had a 1,000-seat theater and 47 stores, including 3 anchor stores, which were Woco on the eastern end, which if you guys know what that was like a discount or a department store that was owned by the Woolworths Company, which I'm sure many of you guys have heard of. The fair, it was on the western end, and Detroit, Michigan-based Federal's, which I assume was a department store in the center. Now, Federal's later closed, and it briefly became Robert Hall Village until 1977 when it filed for the bankruptcy. The space was later occupied by the JCPenney, which you guys see straight ahead, and you guys saw my last video in 1983, which was also around the same time Woco shuttered other U.S. operations as the parent company started to struggle, and you guys know they'd eventually go under. Now, in August 1986, the mall, it was named to its current name, which was the Cortland Center. In 1987, the fair closed and became Mervin's, if I'm saying that right. Now, the former Woco space, it was subdivided. It was occupied by the Crowley's department store and some additional stores. Now, the mall reached its peak really in 1994 as it had 80 stores, which is not a bad-sized mall. You know, your average mall today has about 100 to 110 or so, if I take a guess. So it's a little bit smaller, but I've been to many smaller ones, as you guys have seen in this channel. Now, the Crawleys closed in 1997, but the good news is that a year later, the movie theaters there expanded under the management of National Amusements. I don't know who that is, I'll be honest. But in the 2000s, there were some changes. Tucker Development did acquire the mall from Forest City Enterprise in 2004 and began some minor renovations to it. Now, the far end of the former Crawleys, it was converted to an Old Navy in July 2000. But they would relocate inside the mall in 2005, displacing a former FYE, which closed. So FYE didn't last here very long because FYE wasn't invented until the early 90s. So I don't know why they didn't make it here, but as well as around this time too, the Payless Shoe Source, it was relocated, but it will remain in the mall. Now, later that year, Staples moved from a nearby strip mall into the Old Navy former location, while the remainder of the former Crawleys was split between a new Joann's, which, funny enough, as you guys know, is now the whole company's out of business, and as well as which that did result in the closure of the existing Joann's store, and the Dunham Sports would move into that space, which was moved from a nearby strip mall. Now, Maureen's, if I'm saying that right, closed in early 2006 when the chain exited Michigan. Now, in January of 2007, JCPenney announced it would relocate its assistant store to a newer, larger location, the former Mervyn space, which you guys saw straight ahead, which, if you guys notice, like the entrance of that JCPenney, you notice that it looks very modern. There's only one other JCPenney I've been to that actually has that same design, which was the Olean Center store, which, I don't know if I said this in the Olean Center video, I probably did, but that Olean Center store also moved as it was in the former Ames space. It moved, which is now closed. But anyway, as I said, we're not into that store. But there were some more changes as Old Navy closed in January 2008, and JCPenney's new store would open up officially on March 1st, 2008, resulted in the closure of 3 former JCPenney stores. I don't know how 3 closed because of 1, but, you know, whatever. Now, the new location of JCPenney featured several departments which were not present in the former location, such as an inline Sephora store. But the JCPenney former main store in the middle of the mall was replaced by Steve & Barry's, which lasted less than a year. You know, Steve & Barry's, they overexpanded and all went out of business. So I'm kind of surprised they're still open up stores 6 months before they closed. But it is what it is. Now, unfortunately, 2009, and the movie theaters closed as well, which was kind of sad as it was here since the original, as you guys know. Now, the Planet Fitness did replace the old Old Navy space in February 2011. So that big space in the middle where Planet Fitness was, that's why it's so large, because that was the Old Navy. Now, on May 20th, 2011, the cinema was reopened again by NCG Cinemas as NCG Cortland Cinemas, so kind of interesting. Now, in 2013, the mall was sold by Tucker Development to a limited liability company from the state of Delaware. So kind of interesting. This mall, you know, for being in a small town, hasn't had too many ownership changes, which honestly is usually a good sign for the mall. When you see a mall going through, like, multiple ownership changes, it usually is not a very good thing. Now, the most recent history that I found about this mall was in 2018. The Sloan Museum opened up an exhibit space from the former JCPenney Steve & Barry's, which is actually pretty cool, and at least it's being, you know, kind of reused for some sort of purpose now. I will also mention, too, the movie theaters closed in 2021, so that's sad. Now, what are my thoughts on this mall? Well, I think it's going to be around for a little bit. There is a lot of your small shops in here, and I think that really helps keep the mall going, and I was speaking to somebody who works for the mall who wasn't rude to me about filming, but just said, you know, don't call the mall, you know, a dead mall. It's not. And then he explained to me why, and he said this mall gets pretty decent traffic, and there's enough of the businesses in here, and there's not, you know, many things around this area. Flint, as you guys may or may not know, Flint is not a great area. They're, you know, they had their big water crisis 10 years ago, and they really haven't recovered, and they're very poor. So the people really need, like, this community and this little mall to keep themselves going. And the fact that it still has, you know, your 2 anchor spaces, even though Dunham's doesn't use a mall entrance, at least they didn't the day I was there. Still, you know, I mean, having that and then having the JCPenney, which, from me being an employee at JCPenney, I can say they're doing fairly well for themselves, and they're not closing down too many stores. So I think it will make it here. I think that definitely helps. But what are your guys' thoughts on the mall? For some people, you know, live locally, maybe they have different thoughts. I think it will still be here for many more years. I'll say at least 5 years, but only time will tell. And honestly, it'd be pretty cool because this place has been here for over 60 years, which is a long time for a mall, so that's pretty cool. But in any event, I'm going to sign off the music the rest of the video. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to hit like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys for the next video. Live from Burden, Flint, Michigan, Alex Weinsheimer's out. And I'll talk to you guys real soon. Bye-bye, guys.